Beginning recording, and welcome everyone to the first of several 2022 CVRD budget meetings. Thank you to all of our panelists and attendees for joining us this evening. My name is Chris Schumacher. I'm the Manager of Communications and Engagement for the Cowichan Valley Regional District and have the distinct pleasure of hosting these budget meetings. I want to start by acknowledging that we are joining from various parts of the traditional unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, and would like to do some introductions of those who are in attendance and form our panelists this evening. I'll start with our elected officials. We have Chair of our board, Lori Yanni Bernardo. We have Director Blaise Salmon representing Mill Bay. We have Director Mike Wilson representing Cobble Hill. And we will soon hopefully be joined by Sierra Wilson, Director of Area B, Shawnigan Lake. From our staff, we have our CAO, Brian Carruthers. We have our GM, General Manager of Corporate Services, Barb Mohan. Our Chief Financial Officer, Natalie Wayner. And our Manager of Finance, Tracy Bowen.
Just a slight Freudian slip there. That's Sierra Acton, not Sierra Wilson.
Oh, thank you, Director Wilson, Sierra Acton. I want to just start with some housekeeping before we get underway. This might be a new format for some of our attendees, and so I just wanted to give you an overview of the functionality of our WebEx events. You'll notice on the right-hand pane, we have a question and answer feature, which at any point during this meeting, you can ask questions, whether it's during the presentation or afterwards. We will have time to answer the questions that come in from our attendees. There's also a chat feature, which allows you to provide comments, ask questions. If you're having trouble hearing somebody, please let us know through there. You are able to toggle who you are sending your chat to, so please ensure that it's on for everyone so that all the panelists will see it if you are having issues or are submitting a comment. The purpose of these budgetary meetings are to help the public to better understand the CVRD budget, provide opportunity for you to ask questions about the budget methodology, impacts to our services, and other general questions about the draft budget. It can be challenging for us to address questions that are specific to budget items that are already have been received and have preliminary approval from the board of directors. And so if anybody does have questions of that nature, we're hoping that potentially our elected officials can address those in this meeting if they come up. The secondary purpose of the meeting, of course, is to better enable the public to provide feedback to the board on the proposed budget. So we are very much interested in receiving comments and input on the budget. And hopefully the session will enlighten and provide greater clarity around that and enable people to provide more detailed and meaningful feedback to the board. So while you can provide comments and hopefully use the chat feature in this evening's session to do so, the most effective way and our preferred method for those comments to come in is by emailing them to finance@cvrd.bc.ca. We'll put that email into the chat feature so that you can copy it and potentially send an email with some comments. We'll be receiving comments up to noon on Friday, February 18th. This will ensure that staff have adequate time to include those comments in the budget package that will go to the board for their final budget deliberations at the special committee of the whole meetings scheduled for February 24th and 25th. So with all that said, I believe we will get underway into the presentation. So the format for the evening will be a presentation from our finance staff, followed by the question and answer period. But as I've said, please feel free to submit questions that you may have at any given point during the presentation, and we'll try our best to answer those in the order that they're received. I'll now turn it over to our finance staff for the presentation.
Okay, so I'm just gonna try and share my screen. Chris and I tried this, so hopefully it's still gonna work for me.
Tracy, there is one thing I forgot to mention, just for those in attendance so they're aware, this meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the presentation and the question and answer period will be available for all of our budget meetings on the CVRD website.
Okay, can everybody see my screen that says CVRD 2022 budget overview? Right. Okay. Okay. The Cowichan Valley Regional District has 4 municipalities and 9 electoral areas in our service. And for the 2022, we have 178 services. There are a number of company challenges and exceptions that the board must balance when settling the 2022 budget, including how to meet the needs of the public under increasing financial constraints, increasing downloading from other levels of government resulting in increased pressure to provide additional services, aging infrastructure, and increasing construction costs that exceed consumer price index. Legislative changes and higher requirements for standards of care that put increasing cost pressures on existing services, and increasing non-controllable expenditures such as hydro and insurance. The CVRD provides a variety of services to different partners, and therefore the impact of our budgeting process on each electoral area or municipality is different. For example, the cost of the average home in electoral area A, which participates in 40 functions, is $1,406.74. And Area A also has 5 specified area services encompassing the variety of services such as street lighting, drainage, and fire protection. To complicate matters, some services are provided directly by the CVRD, others are in partnership with the organization, and some take the form of grants to organizations that provide services to the area. The CVRD does not provide education, sidewalks, gutters, curbs, and roads, policing, healthcare, or highways. These are all provincial services or municipality. The CVRD, oh, sorry, I've lost my place. How we're funded is mainly by requisition, and of the 2021 budget, it was 40.5% of the budget was formed by requisition. The funding for each service is determined in the establishment bylaw, and with so many services, there is a wide variety of funding mixes used. We can, however, broadly characterize the main types of the services funding as regional, electoral area, sub-regional, and specified areas. Regional services are funded based on assessment for all 13 jurisdictionals within the regional district and all typical services that benefit an entire region, such as solid waste management and general government. Electoral area services are specified to the rural areas only and are therefore shared by all participating electoral areas on assessment basis with no municipal funding participation. As an example of this is community planning, where the CVRD performs this function for the electoral areas, but not the municipalities. On the chart on the screen, the X is who pays into it, and the O's are where a portion of that area pays into that specific service. Sub-regional services. Many of our services are sub-regional in nature in that they provide a service for certain areas within the CVRD, and funding is shared for those participating partners, normally of an assessment basis. An example of this is Kerry Park. Specified areas are set up to fund services that are provided to a number of properties that do not represent the entire electoral area and are different in that these functions are established in the response to petition by the owner to have the service provided. A service area is established to encompass the properties that receive the service in that area, and such a service is fire service. While taxation is the major component of the CVRD's revenue base, the CVRD has a few other revenue streams. Non-taxation revenue streams that are considered to be part of the budget process include user fee and charges, which is like curbside pickup and utilities, permits and licensing fees. Examples are building permits and subdivision fees, reserve funds, grants, and proceeds from borrowing. The proceeds from borrowing is for capital purposes only. The CVRD has recent years taken advantage of low interest rates to borrow short term in order to fund capital purchases, but also borrows longer term for longer term capital projects. As mentioned, service funded with other revenue sources include the Community Health Network, municipal MFA debt, curbside garbage and recycling services, sewer, water, and some streetlight servicing. The current budget approach is incremental, meaning that the current activities and staffing levels are considered as core and used as a baseline for the upcoming budget. The approach uses core expenditures as the basis for the preparation of the draft budget, with requests to changes to the existing service levels being treated as supplemental requests to the commissions and the committees for their consideration. Core expenditures are defined as those that are required to maintain the current levels of staffing, services, and capital, including allocations of resources within an operational budget that do not require an increase in requisition. Supplemental requests are for the purpose of budgeting are defined as items that are in addition to the current staffing and or service level, and any capital that requires an increase in requisition or user fee. This includes purchases of construction of new capital, the addition of part-time staff, positions, and changes to programs and services requiring increases of user fees and requisitions. Staff was directed to target a 3% requisition increase for 2022. In some services, such as solid waste and the Vancouver Island Regional Library, this was not possible due to existing contracts. The board has had a few budget meetings in 2022 and has considered some supplemental requests. After each meeting, the CVRD budget website is updated to reflect the decisions made at each meeting. With the decisions made to date, the budget includes a requisition increase of 5.44%. The board will hold a meeting on February 24th and 25th to review all the decisions that have been made and propose any further changes to the budget before the final financial plan bylaw is brought forward in March. The increase to requisition is described as a total number. However, as mentioned previously, the effects of individual properties varies based on the number of factors, including property assessment and property location. Only the participants in the service area contribute to the cost of providing that service. This slide shows the impact of each municipality and electoral area of the proposed 2022 budget, which includes core and supplementals. So in electoral area A, B, and C, the largest changes are for general government, parks and trails, solid waste complex, and transit. In area A, the average home would see an increase of $65.56. This chart, which is available on the CVRD website, shows how the tax requisition is broken down by function. In area B, the average home would see an increase of $174.18. In area C, the average home would see an increase of $119.94. This is the link to the on the website for where you can find the most current up-to-date budget information for 2022. A number of detailed schedules are available on the CVRD website, providing total budget information as well as detailed financial information for each of the services. The majority of the schedules look at changes in property taxation. Parcel tax information is provided in separate schedules. Schedule A presents the changes in tax requisition. It only shows services that have changed and details the amount of the change for that service. Down at the bottom of the slide, There's a total difference between the general tax requisition of 2021 and that of 2022. This does not include the change of local area services that affect only specified defined areas. Schedule B shows the change in tax requisition by jurisdiction. The change is due to other jurisdictions column reflects the increase in the library requisition. Also down at the bottom in the increase is local service area taxes such as fire services. Schedule C shows the changes in requisition going back to 2015. Schedule D has a page for each jurisdiction. It lists all the services that the area participates in and shows those changes for the service. Down at the bottom, it includes the local service area taxes applicable to the jurisdiction and the change on those as well. Schedule E has a page for each jurisdiction and shows the impact for the average home in that area. Schedule F is a summary of all the short and long-term debt. The schedule on the website is not yet been updated for 2021 debt, as we haven't finished borrowing for the year yet, and the schedule will be updated once year-end has been completed. Similar to Schedule F, Schedule G has not yet been updated for 2021. Finance does not usually transfer funds to capital reserve until the end of the year. The schedule will be updated once all transactions are completed for year end. Schedule G has a portion of capital reserves and a portion for operating reserves. Again, the schedule will be updated once year end has been completed. Schedule 8 shows assessment by jurisdiction for 3 years. The 2022 completed roll is used for the 2022 budget calculations. Schedule I shows how the requisition for an area is split between the property classes. And there'll be one for each jurisdiction on the website. Schedule J shows the cost of a $100,000 home and shows a portion of the total assessment represented by each area. Schedule K is the parcel tax for sewer and water systems. And Schedule I in user fees. And for sewer and water systems on Schedule L. It is important to note that any increase in parcel tax or user fee for a service does not necessarily mean an increase to the property owner. In many cases, new properties have been added to the service area, thus increasing the amount collected without having to impact an individual property. Those are some of the detailed budget schedules available on the website. We also have more specific detail for individual services. For each service, there is a summary sheet. It gives a description of the service, lists the amount being requisitioned for 2022, the maximum amount that can be requisitioned if applicable, and shows the split between the participating areas. This is followed by the 5-year financial plan for the function. And then lastly, it is the budget detail from our accounting software showing the expenses of 2019, 2020, and the budget for 2021 and the proposed budget for 2022. And all of this is available on our website. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Tracy. So now we will begin the question and answer period session of the meeting. I would like to acknowledge that Director Acton is with us.
Mr. Schumacher, might I ask a question, please, just for the for listening in people? The presentation that's the presentation which has just been given, it's very good, and it does explain a lot. Is that presentation available to the public to view later on, or will it be on the CVRD website?
I will get back to you on that because I'm not sure. We did not put it on there last year, but I can find out if we will put it on again this year.
That's great. Thank you. I think it would be a good idea.
Director Wilson, as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the meeting's being recorded, and so each of these meetings will be posted within the budget section of the website. So the presentation, kind of narrated by Tracy, will be available in 4 different formats, which is probably more helpful for the public, I think, than just having the slide deck on its own. So I want to invite any of our members of the public as attendees to pose any questions that they might have about the budget to us using the question and answer feature in the right-hand pane. We don't have any questions coming yet, but I wanted to provide an opportunity for anybody to pose one. Please, Director Acton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Schumacher. If I could pose a question on behalf of the community, I think some clarity on our assessments. The assessments in Shawnigan Lake have gone up quite high, and how that might affect the community and their taxes. If finance would be able to explain that a little bit, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I can take this one. Yes, this year has been quite the unique year for the CVRD. Taxes have gone up, and what's happened is the residential taxes have increased disproportionately to that of the utilities, light industry, or businesses. So if I can give an example, I will share my screen here for, say, Area B. I don't know if I have that ability. No, I don't.
Natalie, let me pass over the presenter duties to you so you can do that.
Thank you.
Coming your way right now.
Yeah, I see it. So the average increase for the CVRD for assessment value was 35%, and that's across the whole region. Some regions went up more and some regions went up less. But as you can see on this comparison, the residential homes went up by 44%, which means, and you'll see that managed forest went down by 8.48%. So that would also means that while the assessments for managed forest, those taxpayers pay less, the amount that would have been paid by the managed forest is now being paid by residential taxpayers, creating an increase. So while you see that there's an increase or on the requisition that Tracy showed, that showed one amount, it actually shows as a different amount in the area on the Schedule E for Area B. So the total requisition increase for an area may be 5%, but you'll see on the Schedule E that it could be to the impact to the average residential homeowner is 9%. And that is because of the assessments that came in, and the assessments for residential taxpayers is much higher. If you take a look at Area A, you'll see it's much closer for the residential taxpayers. It's about 32.42% increase, which is very close to the 35. And while there's a slight decrease of 109,000 for more managed forest versus the 1 million for for Area B, you'll note that there won't be as much of an impact. So when you look at the total requisition increase, it's very close for A schedule. But when you look at Schedule E for Area A for the residential homeowner, you'll see it's very close to what the actual increased requisition is. Same goes for Area C. So when you look at Area C, you'll see that it's slightly more than the 35%. And there isn't any areas that are actually decreasing in Area C. So therefore, the residential taxpayers will be paying much closer, slightly more because it's 38%, but much closer to that of what the actual requisition increases. And I hope that helps clarify things a little bit.
Thank you, Natalie. I do see we have a question from Gordy, and I believe that this would be, I'm going to direct it to staff if they want to take a crack at it. It's very general in that, what are the available uses of the gas tax?
I can answer that question. The gas tax, it depends, first of all, of which community works funding it was. The very initial community works funding, where there could be funds available, is basically for clean air, clear water, and it's very restricted on what can be utilized for. Later, community works funding is for capital projects that are for parks, recreations, trails. About the only capital area that's very clearly defined that cannot use gas tax is fire halls.
Thanks for that, Natalie. Donna has said she submitted some questions, but I don't see them appearing. So I'm going to unmute her and allow her to pose a question verbally. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Natalie, unless you have something to add before I do that.
I see Donna's got some questions, 3 of them in the my Q&A. They've popped up there. I've seen it on the screen.
Oh, they may have been. You can direct questions privately to individual panelists instead of sharing them with everyone. So please, if you want to go ahead and read out the question, that'd be great, Natalie.
Okay, function 279, parks and trails. Why are areas D, G, and H combined into one item? This means no transparency in expenses, unlike the other 6 areas, and requesting that there can be transparency. I totally understand. It comes up as if you went on to function 279 on the website and looked at the beginning cover sheet, it says Z and it covers all of those areas. And the reason why is BC assessment assesses the whole area, but it excludes the Island Trust. So BC assessment only gives it a code, and we have no way of breaking it out in finance. It comes to us as one code, one total assessment. Which is why there is a challenge. It has been brought up and discussed, but unfortunately to date, there's no way that we're able to undo that. The next question I have is for function 282, South Cowichan Community Parks, which only covers one item, Cowichan Bay Boat Launch, which doesn't have any buildings. Why not change the name to Cowichan Bay Boat Launch? Good question, but when a service is established, it's by bylaw, and that establishes and sets the name, which when it was established, this was the South Cowichan Community Parks. And it wasn't just for the boat launch when it was established, it was to provide operation, maintenance, and capital expenditures for certain parks in the South Cowichan area. Since that time, yes, it's gone down to only funding just the boat launch, but it has the ability, once again, in the future, this is forward thinking, that there might be other parks, or these parks might need capital or operating expenditures, and so the name stays the same. The last question I have is, which schedule is used to calculate the mill rate? Well, a regional district is unlike a municipality, so we're not a taxing authority, so we do not set the tax or the mill rate. We go and do a requisition, which is the amount that we requisition for each area. And so when Tracy showed that spreadsheet of how much would go for each and the increases for each area, if you go to the website, I'm going to see if I can bring it up here. No, I'm not able to go into the exact where it clicked on the click here. The sheet that Tracy, did you have that in your presentation earlier? The one, Tracy, available? Here it is. Nope. Okay, hold on. I will share my screen. I've got it up here. My screen number 2. So for a regional district, we only send out a requisition. And so if you look at the proposed 2022 requisition, this is the amount that we send off to the provincial government for the electoral areas for them to collect. So these areas here, and they set the mill rate. We then send a requisition out to the municipalities, each to the City of Duncan, District of North Cowichan, Ladysmith, and Lake Cowichan, and they do the tax rate bylaws. And those tax rate bylaws are what sets and establishes those mill rates.
Thanks, Natalie. I think that was the 3 questions that we had from Donna that came to you. Donna has submitted another question, but before we get to that, I see Bernard has submitted a question, and it is, why did managed forests decrease in assessment value?
I can take that question. BC Assessment has put a freeze on managed forests. This is, the elected officials have been talking about this, and this has been a concern of theirs that they've brought forward. That they've put a 3-year freeze, and so with that 3-year freeze in the rates, that's where the assessment values has been declining compared, and especially to that of other areas.
Before we go to the next questions that we have, I just want to ensure that our directors in attendance, if they wanted to add anything to any of the questions that have been posed so far, have an opportunity to do so. And if you do, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just continue on with the next questions. Seeing no, oh, please, Director Acton.
Sorry, I always have something to say. Just to add to the question of asking about how gas tax money can be spent, because I've had a few people email me suggesting that if we could spend it on our roads. And so the CVRD does not manage our roads, and so that's not possible. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Okay, so the next question comes from Brenda, and it asks, function 10 indicates new staff positions with an increase of requisitions of $607,000 or $607,033 as in supplemental item. Will these new hires remain supplemental items or be included into future core budgets? I think I'll turn to Natalie or Tracy to answer that.
Supplementals, like all supplementals, are added to the budget after the board deliberates. So once they get, we have a core budget, which is ongoing to maintain services. Those are the values for that. So the supplementals, when approved for, say, function 100, once the board approves it, it gets moved into the operating budget. And if it's a hired position, then it is an ongoing expense. Yes.
Thank you, Natalie. Brenda also asks, how is function 198 GM different than function 199? Is 198 a new hire?
Correct. That is a new GM position that's been created. So yes, that would be a new hire.
Perhaps, Mr. Carruthers, do you want to provide a little bit of more background in terms of what that entails, just for the understanding of the audience?
Sure, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so further to that question, so as the CEO and the senior management team, we're responsible for making recommendations to the board with respect to our staffing resources. If you've noticed in this budget and in previous budgets, there have been increasing expectations of the CVRD with respect to increasing services, as well as some of the downloading that Tracy had talked about earlier. We have a significant suite of services that we offer to the citizens. And in restructuring our organization to make sure that we're able to adequately deliver those services, it was determined that we needed to add an additional general manager and spread some of the functions out so that they're better aligned and that there's appropriate work allocation to the staff. So this organization, I've been here for 8 years. This organization has not seen a restructuring in 8 years, yet there's been exponential growth in the services that we provide. So the proposal was made and has been included in the budget for 2022.
Thank you for that, Brian. I don't see any more questions in either the chat or our Q&A function. We have a small group of attendees this evening, and so I think given that we're only 40 minutes into our just over an hour we have budgeted of time here, I just want to quickly go through the list. I know it can be confusing in terms of typing in your questions. I want to ensure everybody that's in attendance has an opportunity to pose a question given the size. So I'm going to look to Mr. Al Brunette. I've unmuted you, sir. Do you have any questions that you'd like to pose at this time? Mr. Brunette? Okay, I'll move on. We had questions from Bernard and Brenda. I'm going to go to CT. CT, do you have any questions you'd like to pose to staff or the directors this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to Chris Googlis. Chris, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt, but you do have a question from a Jim Walsh. I see in
wonderful.
my chat.
I was just waiting for something to come in. Here we go. Function 279, Parks and Trails. As Bing Creek's Operations Center is a solid waste facility, under what circumstances would Parks and Trails be required to provide security for an expenditure of $16,000?
I'll take that one, Chris. Yes, thanks for the question. Bings Creek is primarily a solid waste facility. However, we do have other operations that work out of Bings Creek. All of our utility services are based out of Bings Creek, as our park operations. So they share the costs of some of the operating costs associated with Bings Creek, where we have shared facilities in terms of shops, parking, and other support facilities. So that's why Parks and Trails are paying a portion of that cost, as will solid waste and our utilities.
All right, thank you, Brian. Just moving down the list, I see Cliff, and I suspect that's Mr. Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake. Do you have any questions this evening, Cliff?
Yes, I do. On Schedule E, I see that a house in Mill Bay, its price has gone up. Average for the taxes $65.56, and in Area B it's $174.18. Why the big difference between the two areas?
Schedule A or Schedule E?
Schedule E.
So, okay, Schedule E between the two for Area A and which area? Sorry, I missed that. I was looking at Schedule A.
Area B.
And that, the reason for that, and Regional District Services Fund, when you have three, say A, B, and C funding something like Carey Park Recreation Center, Area B had significant increases to assessment. So now they end up having to pay more of the taxes. So there is a shift when you have a service, and so they end up paying more of the service. So Area A and Area C end up paying a little bit less of the pie, where Area B picks it up. So that ends up impacting the taxpayers and the residents as well. So they not only is there the shift of the residential rate going up higher than that of the average rate, there's also, when that happens, there's a division of how the service is funded, which is that top portion on each one of those services that Tracy was mentioning. That shows the distribution between the areas that participate in the service.
Oh, okay. May I have another question?
Please go ahead, sir.
Function 488, Shawnigan Basin Society, was funded at zero this year. And we have sent in a requisition or our plan to get funding, and yet it wasn't even mentioned on the plan. Can you tell me why that it wasn't considered at all?
I'm not sure who may want to take this question on. Is there any hands?
And that's essentially a question for the board. And I don't know that, I think you would have to wait until the budget process was concluded, but the board is ultimately responsible for deciding levels of taxation under any service. And other than that, I can't speak to decisions of the board. That would be a board response.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. I see another question has come through from Brenda. CVRD website schedules provide information of tax requisition increases. What is the total expenditures of CVRD from 2021 to 2022? This would include borrowed funds and funds used from operating reserves and capital reserves. Is there a source or reference that would show this amount? Perhaps I'll direct that to Ms. Weiner.
So there is the 5-year plan right now of the current plan, which is the 2021, which has the revenue and expenditures of all of it. And it summarizes all the borrowing and everything that was in the 5-year plan for 2021. When the budget, after the deliberations on the 24th and 25th, there will be an updated schedule on there, and that will provide the information of be the budget bylaw for the 2022 to the 2026, which provides all parcel tax, how much is funded by parcel tax, requisition, other revenue. It also outlines how much is short-term borrowing, long-term borrowing, how much is done in capital projects.
Thanks for that, Natalie.
Did you want me to show? I could show it, Chris, if quick like.
Sure.
This is from the CVRD website, and it shows the 2021 to 2025 5-year financial plan. And so this shows the outline. When the new budget is adopted, the new financial plan will be put up there containing all of the information.
All right, thank you for that. Going back to not seeing any other questions coming in through our functions, I'm just going back to our list. Mr. Dave Monday, did you have any questions you wanted to ask this evening?
Well, am I muted, or can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Oh yeah, good. Well, I'm with Cliff. I'm the president of the Shawnigan Basin Society, so we are looking at our function 488. We are, the bylaw 3737 provides us with a mandate to do environmental work and public safety work, which we continue to do in the watershed. And we have been zero funded now since 2019. However, we're fully funded by, we're being told basically that we're not supported by the community, yet we're fully funded by the community in those 3 years and going into 4 years. So I'm just curious about, how long this dry spell will last.
So, Mr. Monday, unless there's a director who wants to speak to that specific service and function, I think questions of that nature we're going to save to be posed to the board for their budget deliberations, and not try to go into too much detail around any specific service or function during the budget meeting. I would definitely, as we said at the outset, we're definitely interested in input. And so using that finance@cvrd.ca email address to provide any comments that you may have that can be included in the budget package would definitely be appreciated. So please, we would encourage you to do that, or reach out directly to the director of your area with those comments. Looking back at our chat feature, no. I'm gonna go down to Mr. David Weeb. Sir, you're unmuted. Do you have any questions this evening? I believe he's calling in. I don't hear anything. Donna and Gordy have already asked. Mr. Walsh. I'm going to skip over our general manager, Mr. Elzinga, who I see is in attendance. And Director Lynn Smith from Area G Saltaire is also here. I'm going to bypass her for any questions at the moment and go to Mr. Peter Nash. Do you have any questions this evening, Peter?
No, Peter.
No, we don't. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll move to Mr. Russell Lyon. Do you have any questions this evening, sir?
Yeah, I do. I've got a question with respect to function 232. Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yep, please go ahead.
My understanding, this is with respect to phase 3 of the Shawnigan Village Rail Trail. There was an ESAC meeting on June 20th, 2018, where phase 3 was not approved yet. Now I'm seeing in the supplementals, and I'm seeing budget amounts for phase 3. in 2022 and also in 2023. And I'm wondering how we got there without the committee approving the phase in the first place. First question. Second question I have is, how do we use the gas tax fund to finance a project that is not owned or controlled by the CVRD? The CWF funds were resolved to include in that table 5.01 that it would be for existing projects used or owned by the CVRD, and this isn't that. This is a new project. So how did that happen? And my third question is, if this project is not on land owned or controlled because of the non-exclusive license of occupation agreement, why are we, it appears, going to be capitalizing these, recording these as assets? How does that not become a gap, a generally accepted accounting principle violation? Those are my three questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lyon. I believe the first two questions would be best posed to our elected officials in attendance. I believe the first one was around the process of the project going to the Electoral Area Services Committee and being approved there. Does anybody have a comment or response to that?
Yeah, Chris, I'm not sure that I can speak to the process. I mean, the matter is included in the budget. That would have to be some dissecting of previous committee meeting minutes, and I wouldn't have an answer to that, and I don't believe staff would have an off-the-cuff answer for that. I'm going to suggest that if maybe Ms. Wayner can speak to the limitations of the community works funding around where we can spend those funds, whether it's on CVRD owned property or property where we have tenure. So if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, the CVRD can spend, if we have a lease, we can spend those funds on that property. We can also give them, it has been spent on for other organizations on property that's not been owned by the CVRD, as long as it's for public access. And that's one of the, if it's to go to an outside, we've done a parking lot at a community hall that's been funded with community works funding. And that funding is because it's for, has public access.
All right, thanks for that, Natalie. Going back to the introductory comments, our comments around of this nature regarding a specific function or project that's within the budget and has been preliminarily approved. We very much would love attendees of the meeting or the public in general to submit input around the budget, as specific as you may want to be for anything preliminarily approved in the draft budget, to finance@cvrd.ca. Is the best way to do so, and that can be collected and reported and included in the board package for the upcoming special committee meetings regarding the 2022 budget and deliberations on February 24th and 25th. So thank you, Mr. Lyon. And lastly, I will go just open the mic for Yvonne Tomlinson, who is also in the meeting. Do you have any questions this evening, Yvonne?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Do I see? Oh, all right. We have one more question in here from Donna. When is the 2022 budget going to be finalized?
The plan is on March 23rd that the budget will be going to the board for adoption.
And coming from Brenda, does the spreadsheet of the effects of requisition change by jurisdiction indicate the current budget changes? When will the schedules be updated? I'm looking back at you, Natalie.
Yeah, that we on February 15th, we will have the updated to the schedules on the change by jurisdiction. So the plan is to have it updated by February 15th. please be advised that there is a revised roll that comes at the beginning of April, and that changes all of the assessment numbers yet again. And so there will be an update after the revised roll is done at the beginning of April.
All right, thank you for that. Well, having moved through the entire attendee list and seeing no new questions having come in, I would just want to give one last opportunity if any of our elected officials wanted to provide any comments or to the audience here this evening before we close the meeting. Seeing no hands. Oh, Director Salmon, please go ahead.
I'd just like to thank all the members of the public who took the time to show up tonight and contribute on the budget process, which is a very important process for the CVRD. So thanks, everyone.
And Director Acton, did I see your hand as well?
Yeah, mine was the same. So I echo those sentiments. And I guess I would just add that we do everything we can to reduce the requisition at CVRD, and staff has done a really good job at trying to reduce wherever they could. And to my colleagues in the South as well, that they also feel that way, that we try in any way that we can, but not, at the cost of the community. So we continue to fund amenities for our community, but in Shawnigan Lake, we've been lucky enough to be able to keep most of those at zero. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Director Acton. Chair Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to thank everyone also for attending and really appreciate all the staff's hard work. It's a long, arduous job for a budget. So thank you all. It was a good meeting tonight.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists for attending. I see there is some thanks coming in from attendees directed towards the panelists as well. So thanks all around to everybody. It's always nice to have the opportunity to share this kind of information and generate some more meaningful input around important decision making like this. So thank you to everyone, and we will look forward to the next 3 of our budget meetings for the 2022 budget. And once again, the recording of this meeting will be posted on our website. So please look for that in the coming day or two, and feel free to share it widely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Chris.